Hello everyone. Welcome to Programming in C for Beginners. I'm Amit Kumar and this is the 30th tutorial Scope and Visibility Part 1. Friends, in our previous tutorial we have talked about the lifetime and of course the storage classes related to different functions and variables that we use in our program. And proceeding ahead in the same topic, we are going to discuss about scope and visibility today. So without wasting any time further, let's proceed with today's tutorial. Now an identifier's visibility determines the portions of the program in which it can be referenced. Now what does it mean? It means that visibility of an identifier is actually the portions of the program where it can be referenced. For example, if an identifier can be referenced inside a function, then definitely that function belongs to the visibility of the identifier, right? So visibility of any identifier depends on the portion of the program where they can be used. An identifier is visible only in portions of a program encompassed by its scope. And scope is something which actually decides this visibility. So scope of an identifier actually decides the visibility of the identifier. Now there are 4 different types of scope in C, which are file scope, function scope, block scope, and function prototype scope. Out of these 4 scopes, we are going to discuss the first 2 in this tutorial and the next 2 in the next tutorial. So as the name suggests, any identifier which is having a file scope is visible throughout the file. That means that certain identifier can be used anywhere inside that file. And hence it is known as file scope. Now we can create variable outside all the blocks, right? Then those variables are nothing but file scope, right? Even there is a mechanism to declare the parameters of a function outside its block. So that is something which we will discuss when we will study about functions. But definitely if anything is declared outside all the blocks in the program, definitely it will have a global visibility or it will have a file scope. Identifier names with file scope are often called as global or external. And the scope of a global identifier begins at the point of its definition and terminates at the end of the translation unit. So definitely if any certain identifier is having a file scope, then the scope of that identifier will start from its definition and will go up to the last statement of the translation unit, or in other words you can say up to the last statement of the object file. Function scope. Now sometimes we treat function scope as same as function prototype scope, but let me tell you they are 2 different scopes. They are completely different from each other, right? Now let's talk about function scope right now. Now there is a facility of having a label. So we can have a label in any C language program, and that label is also very useful, which can be used with the goto statement. Now that's something which we haven't discussed yet, but consider it as like we can have a label inside any function, including the main function, and that label is nothing but an identifier. Fine. Now all those labels that we create inside a function have the function scope. Now the interesting thing is, if you want to create a label, all that you need to do is to provide a name to it, a valid identifier name, and it can be used as a label. You need not to worry about the data type and all, right? Now a label is declared implicitly by its use in a statement, right? So as soon as we declare a labeled statement over there, definitely it will be declared in the memory implicitly for that particular function. Now label names must be unique, and it must be unique within a function. Like you can have 2 different functions having variables or having identifiers of the same data type and even the same name. That is totally allowed. But if you are working in a single function, if more than one developers are working on a single function, then they cannot have more than 1 labels with the same name. So we have discussed about the 2 scopes, file scope and function scope, and now it's time to see the practical of it. Okay friends, so I have opened my Visual Studio Code and I have already inserted tutorial30.c file inside this certain section. Now what I need to do is to show you like how we can have a variable with global scope or external scope. You can say a file scope, and how we can have a variable with a function scope. Now we cannot have any variable inside a function scope, only labels are allowed. So let me show you this program. So let me write down the code first and then I'm going to explain you the thing. Okay, so you can see this program is ready now, and I have created two functions here. One is the main function and one is fun1 function. And I have created a global variable a of integer type and assigned it with 10. Now because this certain variable is global, I can access this variable anywhere inside this program. Like I have accessed it in fun1 and I have also accessed it in main. Now if I will run this program, we know that a is actually 10 and fun1 is incrementing value of a by 1 and then main is incrementing 1 again. So the new value of a will be 12, right? So definitely the answer is wrong. The output here will not be 12. The reason is we are incrementing in fun1 and we are incrementing in main. As soon as the program will run, it will start executing from main itself. It will increment the value of a, which is currently now 10. So it will increment it to 11. And then after program is closed. So clearly you can see, because we haven't called this fun1, this updation will not occur. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I have already shown you that this global scope can be accessed anywhere in the file, and this is also known as file scope. Now let's talk about function prototype, right? And for that specific thing, I'm commenting out these three, or I'm commenting out this whole piece of code. So let me tell you the shortcut. Select the whole piece of code and press Ctrl/. And I want one more function over here which will not do this incrementation part. In fact, this function will accept a value, right? And this function will actually print this value. So it will simply print value of x is equals to x, right? Fine. And now I will remove this thing from the main. So main will only have one thing, that is fun1 call, and I will pass a value to this fun1 like 25, and definitely this x will print 25, right? And now if I try to print this x inside this function, will it be accessible? Let's see. And here I will try to print the value of this x which is declared in fun, right? So let me do that. So it would be %d and I will write down x. And as soon as I will do that, you can find this as an error, right? Because x is undefined. And what is the reason? They are not having right now global scope. And because they are not having global scope, they cannot be accessed outside the function or the block where they are declared. Now, if I talk about that label, now label is nothing but an identifier, and I'm naming few identifier like that. Okay, so I have written the label. So these are the labels. Okay, so I have used 3 labels, and in each label I have written one statement, right? So I'm copying this whole code, fine, and I'm pasting it in fun function. And here I will check this value of x, and accordingly I will go to different first, second and third. We can give this condition before these labels. So fine. Now definitely we will study about if else and go to in much detail. So I am here just telling you what is actually a function scope. So here these labels are having function scope. So what will happen if I will pass 1 to fun, it will print first, 2, then it will print second, and other than that it will always print third. And here we need to call the fun function, right, in the main function itself. So let me call this fun. And I will pass a value, let's suppose 1, and let's see what will be the output. We have to return 0 as well, so return 0. Okay, so now let me run this program. Okay, so let me first clear the console screen, and now I will click and run this program. So you can see the output here. Let me scroll it up. Now you can see I have passed 1, but it is still printing first, second and third. So there are few things that we need to still implement, right? So there are a few things we need to still implement. Now what are these? First of all, we will create one more label over here, and let me name it as end. So here in this label I will just simply print the end, and few more things like they all are printing in one single line. So what I'm going to do now is use \n so that output should come in new line. Fine. And after printing first, I will just write down go to end. Fine. Friends, let me tell you, they recommend not to use go to because it is one of the confusing codes in C language, right? But I'm just using go to explain you the purpose of label. Fine. So now let me run this program and you will see the correct output by yourself. As we have passed 1, it is printing first and then the end. And as soon as I do anything like that, it will start showing first as error because it's not declared inside main function. So clearly, this label 1 is for the function scope. That marks the end of this tutorial. Hope to meet you in the next tutorial. Till then, thank you and happy programming.